The glass shattered before anyone could breathe. A dinner plate struck the marble floor and exploded beneath Daniel Brooks's shoes. He stood frozen, one hand still holding a silver tray. Across the restaurant, a billionaire named Richard Vail stared at him with a cold smile. "Say that again," Richard said. Daniel slowly looked up. "I said," the waiter answered quietly, "your money can buy the table. It can't buy you the right to humiliate people." The entire dining room went silent. Richard leaned back in his chair. Then he laughed. And that laugh was exactly what Daniel had expected. What he hadn't expected was what happened next. Richard's 8-year-old daughter stood up. "Dad," she whispered, "he's right." Daniel had been working the evening shift at the Belmont Hotel for almost 3 years. He wasn't there because he loved carrying trays through crowded rooms. He was there because his wife, Mia, had died 4 years earlier, leaving him with a 6-year-old son, Noah, and a stack of medical bills that seemed determined to outlive her. Daniel had learned how to stretch $20 across an entire weekend. He had learned to sleep less. He had learned that children notice when their father says, "I'm not hungry," after giving them the last piece of chicken. But he had never learned how to stop being kind. That night, Richard Vail had arrived with his daughter, Lily. Richard was famous. He owned hotels, construction companies, and a technology investment firm. He was also exhausted. His company was days away from losing a massive government contract, and every phone call seemed to bring another problem. None of that excused what happened next. Daniel placed the final plate on Richard's table. Richard glanced at him. "Is this supposed to be hot?" "Yes, sir." Richard touched the edge. "It's barely warm. I can replace it." Richard pushed the plate away. "You people always say that." Daniel paused. He had heard insults before. Usually he swallowed them. Tonight, something inside him was already too tired. Richard pointed toward the dining room. "You know what the problem is with people like you?" Daniel said nothing. "You think standing near wealthy people makes you important." Several guests looked down at their plates. Daniel's jaw tightened. He could have walked away. Instead, he said quietly, "No, sir. I think serving people makes me useful." Richard smirked. "Useful?" Daniel nodded. "Sometimes the person holding the tray knows more about people than the person sitting at the table." That was when Richard threw his napkin onto the plate. And Daniel answered, "Your money can buy the table. It can't buy you the right to humiliate people." The plate hit the floor. But before Richard could respond, Lily stood. "Dad." Her voice trembled. "You talk like that to Mom too." Richard's face changed. For the first time that evening, his confidence disappeared. Daniel looked at the girl. She was holding an old photograph against her chest. Richard noticed it. "Lily," he said softly. She opened the photograph. It showed a woman smiling beside a younger Richard. "My mom said people become ugly when they're scared." Richard stared at the picture. Then he quietly asked his daughter to sit down. Daniel walked away. He expected to be fired. Instead, the restaurant manager caught him near the kitchen. "Daniel, upstairs." Now, his stomach dropped. But the manager wasn't angry. She handed him a small envelope. Inside was a photograph. Daniel recognized the woman immediately. It was Lily's mother. Mia had known her. Not socially, professionally. Years earlier, before Daniel and Mia married, Mia had worked as a pediatric occupational therapist. She had spent months helping Lily recover after a childhood accident. Daniel had never known the Vail family still remembered her. There was a note attached. She told Lily that kindness is a skill you practice, not a personality you inherit. Daniel stared at the words. His eyes filled. Then came the second surprise. The next morning, Daniel received a phone call from Noah's school. Noah had been selected for a regional science program. The problem? The program cost nearly $2,000. Daniel thanked the teacher and hung up. Then he sat alone in his car and cried. Not because he was sad, because he knew he couldn't afford it. That afternoon, he returned to the hotel. Waiting in the lobby was Richard Vail. Daniel stopped. "I'm not here to complain," Richard said. Daniel said nothing. Richard held out an envelope. Daniel immediately shook his head. "No, you don't know what's inside." "I know enough." Richard looked at him for several seconds. Then he put the envelope away. "Fair." That surprised Daniel. Richard sat on the lobby bench. "My daughter remembers your wife," he said. "She remembers how Mia stayed with her during therapy when she was terrified." Daniel lowered his eyes. Richard continued. "I didn't come here to pay you." He paused. "I came here because I realized I haven't been listening to my daughter for years." That was the third twist. The billionaire hadn't come to reward Daniel. He had come to ask for advice. Not business advice. Fatherhood advice. Richard admitted that after Lily's mother died, he buried himself in work. He bought Lily everything except what she actually wanted. Time. Daniel listened. Then he said something simple. Kids don't remember what you bought them. Richard looked at him. They remember whether you showed up. Richard nodded. A week later, Lily's school held a small science exhibition. Daniel almost didn't attend because he had an evening shift. But when he arrived, he saw Richard sitting in the back row. No security. No business partners. Just a father. Lily spotted him. Her face lit up. Daniel smiled. Then Noah walked onto the stage. His project was a small machine designed to recycle rainwater. It wasn't perfect. One wheel was crooked. The motor rattled. But when it worked, Noah looked straight at his father. Daniel stood and applauded harder than anyone. Afterward, Richard approached him. You were right. Daniel smiled. About what? Richard looked toward Lily. I showed up. Daniel nodded. Then Richard added, and she hasn't stopped smiling since. Daniel looked at Noah. For the first time in years, he realized something. His life hadn't become easier. The bills were still there. The empty side of his bed was still empty. He still had to work long shifts. But somehow, the weight felt different. A month later, Richard returned to the Belmont Hotel. This time, he didn't ask for a private table. He sat in the restaurant with Lily. When Daniel approached, Richard looked up. Good evening. Daniel smiled. Good evening, Mr. Vale. Richard glanced at Lily. She whispered something into his ear. Richard laughed. Then he looked back at Daniel. She's been practicing something all week. Lily stood on her chair. Thank you for reminding my dad how to be my dad. The room went quiet. Daniel swallowed hard. He simply nodded. And when he walked away, he wiped his eyes before anyone could see. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a person can give another isn't money. It isn't status. It isn't a second chance. Sometimes it's the courage to tell the truth when everyone else is too afraid to speak. Daniel had walked into that dining room as a tired waiter trying to survive another shift. He walked out having reminded a powerful man of something he had forgotten. Being rich can change your life. Being kind can change someone else's.